We continue learning Dirshu Mishnah Brura Hilchais Betzias Hapas. The intricate halachas of possible bekistin when bread loses its tzura and becomes a mezainis. Siman Kuf Samoches. So we continue with Sif Yod Aleph. Says the Machaber in Sif Yod Aleph Yish Misha Omer, quoting Taisa and the Mordechai, the Peruin Shenaisim B'Mayim V'Mayim Islam and Machzei Peruim, and the Mishnah Brura that we finished from Sif Yod ended with this detail that if you have crushed up bread and water, but the water whitens due to the bread that is in it, Alzol lei turita, it loses its form of bread. Pirish ki'ilu amar ta'arase klemer toyar lechem dinahamot. No considered the appearance of bread. Ve'ein mevarich aleho ella. Boirei minei mizaynais ubracha achas me'ein shalish. Says the Mishnah Brura Sivkatan Samach Aleph the Peruim Shanaisnim. Hainu, what does this mean? Kishain b'hem kizayis. They're not a kizayis. The Yeshem kizayis in Sarach Torah Lechem, as you've seen in the previous Sev Koshkas Sev HaKodim. So that's really the way to remember it. That once it's a kizayis, once it's large, which happens to be would usually look more like bread when it's a kizayis. But even if it doesn't look like bread, because it's soaked in one now, once it's a kizayis, it does not lose the shem pas. Here, when we're discussing the bread is soaked and we want to know when it loses the shem pas, says the Mishnah Brura, this is specifically when it is not a kizayis. And they place pieces of bread that is dried out on like a barbecue with beer. And it soaks in the sheikhar and the beer and it turns white. It also loses its shame pas. If you put small piece of bread into that warm beer, to give the taste, but not because you want to eat it, then in then you'll have a fascinating case that you'll be drinking a beer with bits of bread, but it will still be a shahakov alechem in by mamoshos v'davar chashov. The bread is not there; it doesn't have any mamoshos. It's not chashav, and therefore it's fascinating that you could actually be mavatel a piece of bread. So we've got the Samach Gimel explaining our sif that if the water whitens, then the bread loses its teiras lechem. Even though in the previous sip we spoke about if the bread is not being cooked, it's not connected, I feel like even if it does not have the appearance of bread, still because it's not cooked, because the pieces are not combined, just regular bits of bread. Davka Hasam and Shmur over there made this point that what? Shlonishtanu Suras Abbas Be'etzim Klal. It's a regular bit of bread just sitting in water. Shenishmarayim Rakzman Mut. Mashloinimkar B'Tayr Lechem Ayi. It doesn't look like bread. It's a very small bit of bread in a cup of water. Doesn't look like bread. Mashenki Nacha in our case, Shenisha Harbe B'Mayim. In our case, where it's soaking a lot in the water, till the water is turning white from the bread, whose simin shenifsu suras that shows us that the bread has lost his appearance via the soaking, v'avin menu shame lechem, and it loses its name of bread. We continue with Sif Yud Beis, says the Macharish, bread that is soaked in wine, Adam that is red in bread is soaked in red wine, makes a mizaynais, ubracha achas mein shalosh, v'nira, says Machaber, she'ein devar ma'amurim ela b'peirurin, oy b'prusay she'ein b'cholachas kizayis, even only if it's pieces that are less than a kizayis. Explains the Mishnah Brura, Sevkadan Samach Talid in Yayin Edoim Davka Edoim, says Mishnah Brura. Why? Because the bread soaks up the wine, the bread becomes red, therefore of amenatayr lechem. That's the reason why the bread loses its suras lechem, the appearance of bread. Avlim shara pita b'ayin lavan. Let's say you put the bread into white wine. Then you need first only that the wine changes the idea pasa shara b'toycha via the bread that is soaking in el kilal sif yod aleph. And then what bracha you're going to make if it changes, like we said, it's red wine. You're going to make a mezainis if God is a mechera tzoloimar. Lafukish leivar chala moitzi. Ulini brach sayayin. What about on the wine itself? Im kavanasa yeker b'shalach chilas hapas vayayin barak lama take achila. Really, you're just having bread, and the wine is just there to sweeten, to make the bread more palatable. Then nasa yayin tafel, another chiddush, that the wine becomes a tafel. Usually agafen is automatically an ikr. But over here, the wine will come a tafel v'imrach kim barim name zaynis ala pas. Chen asher pas kistin v'yayin v'yayin sarav kanki dina achi. Kol shkin asher prusa shidron kizayis asher pas v'yayin lavan. If it's actual bread or big pieces, then v'arach hamoitz if you allow prusa shem b'em kizayis chanal b'vadi nasi yayin tafel lepas. And certainly the wine is tafel, which of course let's just mention still is a chiddush because we know that wine you make a bracha on even middle of a suda. That's because wine has a chashivos onto itself, but in our case, we're talking about that the wine does not have a chashivas, that the wine is just there, agav, the bread. Which again is going to be the more normal case. Not normal, but that's going to be a more regular case, we'll call it. You're eating the bread and you're having the drink, it's also having it together. Make a bracha on the wine, then make the mezainis on the bread that is soaking. Now we go the flip side. Really, all you want is wine. The bread is just there to give extra, a little bit of flavor. Then nasa pasta yayin v'inavarach rak b'yer b'ria gov. V'hinei lefi zeh says the Mishnah Berurah. Leini shtiyas kaveh hanog b'eineinu shetoivlim by pas kisnin. You're having a cup of joe, you're having a bit of coffee, then you dip a cookie into it. V'sham says Mishnah Berurah, and again, you have to be so careful not to take the din as much as within the case, because if the case is going to change, the din is going to change. Says the Mishnah Berurah, v'shama like v'nasli gamki mishal shneihem. You want both. Near gamki denachal shekoyim shabirach alabas kisin. First make a mezainis v'rach alakavi shahakol v'yishtem ha'at. Before you're going to have the mezainis, you have a dot of the coffee and you make a shahakol. The reason is because if you're dipping in the cake and then you're having them both together, then that's the mezainis. But you want the coffee also, so you should make the separate bracha on the coffee. V'yishtem says the Mishnah Berurah, you know it's even better. What's even better is levad shriya. Really, what you should do is you should first make a bracha on the cake before you dip it in. As Mishartzian points out, why? Because mezainis always comes first, and then and then make a shak on a little bit of sugar. Again, what's the case? The case that you're dipping your coffee into your no, you're not dipping your coffee. You're dipping your cake and your coffee, your cookies into milk, and you want both. But when I take a bite of that cookie and take a bite of that cake, there's some coffee, some milk inside of it. So what's better is to first make a bracha on the milk. Then the Mishnah Berurah explained that really the best is to be able to make the mezainis first. But it's sitting in the coffee, it's sitting in the milk. So first, before you dip it into the milk or the coffee, make a mezainis on the cookie and the cake. Then the best is to make a shahakal on something else. And then eat the two of them together. If you look even if it loses the Torah lechem, you make hamaitzi. Once it is a kazayis, we'll stop over here. We'll pick it up from Sifyat Gimel the next year. B'siyata Dishmaya.